go into my passion and follow this result, the success I was getting, and see if I can turn this into something. And actually, this was the time I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which was incredible. And it was the first time I saw this new way of starting a business, something where you can actually automate a lot of the work. You can focus more on the things you're good at, and you can have a team that does all the manual, heavy lifting stuff. And it means that also you could go and travel. So I didn't have to be in a cubicle anymore. It ticks so many boxes, this business model, compared to all the other previous things I've tried to do. And it also talks about information, and I realized that you can actually sell information, like ebooks, or you can create services online, and I just thought this would be really cool, custom healthy shopping list service for patients based on the conditions. Anyway, then I wrote a CV on Monster just for a laugh. It was like my final fuck you to the pharmaceutical industry, and that was all the reasons why I will never ever be a pharmacist, and the reasons why they need to change the system, and how it's holding back people from very valuable information and actually harming rather than helping. And it was really a joke, and I literally went to town on this, and I never expected anyone ever to contact me. Then this one lady calls me up. She's a headhunter, and she was looking for pharmacists to work for Walmart, who own the biggest supermarket chain called Asda. And I talked all about my results, my success in this CV with getting people off medications, using just diet and nutrition and all that, and why they don't educate you. Why don't they educate you on this stuff in pharmacy school or even medical school? Because most doctors weren't even aware of this stuff. So she actually was saying that you'd be a perfect candidate as a pharmacist working in Asda. And I was like, are you sure? Have you read my CV properly? And I was like, I really don't want to go back. But she somehow convinced me in an hour to get a part-time job with Asda and to see if I could pitch my idea to them for this healthy shopping list service. Because originally I was just going to do it on my own, but then I thought, oh, why not side with the biggest supermarket chain in the world?
Yeah.
Right? Because before, what was happening, and this is why the pharmacists didn't like it, was people going over to the Tesco's, the other supermarket, and buying things that I recommended and making their own cough mixtures, making their own cold and flu remedies, making their own diet plans rather than taking weight loss pills and things like that. So I was, in a way, doing a disservice to the pharmacy, but I was giving more profits to the supermarket. But in this case, the Walmart had the two together. So I thought it was a great thing for them, where pharmacists can be helping, the whole ecosystem could work well together. And actually, they really loved this idea. And they said to me, there's an in-house competition run. It's called Dragon's Den. I don't know if you have anything like that. I think you have Shark Tank here,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So Dragon's Den is like the UK equivalent. And actually, there was this in-house competition run by the guy who founded Dragon's Den and the CEO of Asda, which is owned by Walmart. And literally, people, employees can pitch ideas, winning business ideas, get investment from the directors, and these become products or services within the company, which can then eventually become your own business in its own right. So actually, there was one guy who started off as a guy stacking shelves. He came up with this healthy bar idea, based on seeds and nuts, and he actually got promoted to the head office, and then they invested in it. They took off, and he became really successful with his own brand of food. So all done in house, which I thought was amazing. I thought that's such a cool company to do that. So anyway, I did submit this idea. I got through to the finals, and I had to go and do the pitch. I was like, wow. And I did the pitch, and actually they loved it, and they gave me a job in the head office to carry out this whole project, which was healthy shopping lists, giving out custom kind of ideas for meals and recipes, and with home shopping, so that people with type 2 diabetes, people with chronic health issues who may be housebound could get food delivered to the door.
Nice.
And things I thought it was an amazing idea.
Yeah, sounds great.
Anyway, several months into it, actually, they no longer wanted to go ahead with the idea, which shocked me. And when I was in the corporate head office, like firstly, like it's a very strange system. So you have lots of people working in cubicles. You have that. Then you have the next level up, which you have the managers. Have you ever seen The Office?
Yes.
It's a lot like that. You have these managers, and most of them are a little bit like David Brent. I don't know what they're called what he's called in the American office, but in the UK one, it's David Brent, right? And he's a classic boss who just, he's just awkward. He's not cool at all. Not the kind of person you want to hang out with.
Yeah, I think he's the Steve Carell in the American
version. Yeah, the
version.
Steve Carell guy. Yeah, there's so many of those types. Then you have the next level up, who's the director, and the directors are like they're the dragons. They have their own little caves that they live in, and everyone's scared of them, and you have to be really lucky to get a meeting with them. So there's a whole kind of ladder system, and the managers basically step on each other because they're so protective about their positions, because at any moment they could lose their job, and they have their mortgage, they have all these things, responsibilities, family. So you can understand why it's such a cutthroat environment, and why everyone's so sympathetically switched on, flying fight mode all day long. Plus the amount of coffee everyone drinks.
Great.
And the managers can go and have endless cups of coffee. People at the bottom can't.
Oh wow.
They have to have their own designated breaks. And the directors, they do what they like. So I was the guy, because I won this competition, I had this huge iMac. Everyone else had these tiny little PCs. Even the managers, they had these little PCs. I had this big iMac to work from. I was the teacher's pet, so I was the director's pet, so I could go and speak to him whenever I wanted. I didn't have to go and book like a meeting for like a week in advance, so I could just rock up and I was like hanging out with the directors. So it was a whole different ball game for me, and that pissed off everyone else. And you could see there was a lot of animosity against me, there was some fear from certain managers who probably thought I was a risk, to them losing their jobs and stuff. So it wasn't a nice environment for me to be. I didn't have many friends. I befriended a couple of others who were similar to me. They were like the creative kind of directors, and they all thought the same thing. There's a bunch of robots and a few creative people run the show, and it was a horrible environment to be in, and everyone's just driven around making money and profit at the expense of the environment and people. And it's just obvious they're trying to do something about it now. They're trying to change, but it takes so long to change something like that. It's such a big corporation. So anyway, so when slowly my idea got shelved, because you have to get the managers, you have to get all these people on board to carry out a project. And the directors can only do so much, believe it or not. They also have to manage all these people who are all arguing and fighting with each other. I just couldn't handle this environment, and every day my soul was getting destroyed, and then the final nail in the coffin was when they didn't want to go ahead with the project anymore, and that's when the fear crept in. Firstly, I was like, why would the God not want such an amazing idea to go out to millions of people, to save people's lives? Finally valuable information given out by a big corporation to millions of people, because they have so much traffic. At this point, they were way higher traffic shopping channel than Amazon at this point.
Wow.
This was back in 2010. So it would have been a huge impact. And then it was like, well, the other option was either try and get a job in there and working with these managers in this head office, or go back to being the pharmacist, working in that environment. So it was just hell. I felt really disillusioned, and that's when boom, lightning bolt struck and hit me, and I got this chronic illness called ulcerative colitis, which hits your colon, and basically I was shitting blood 40 times a day. You get ulcers in your colon, and I was losing weight really fast, and literally for a year I was housebound. And that was the time where I had to go inwards. And I'd been trying for so long to quit my job, and trying all these different strategies to quit. Finally my body told me it's time to quit. It's time to do it yourself and give And this amazing experience of self-healing gave me the confidence after I cured myself, because that's the next chapter, was I cured myself of this illness without the drugs and without any surgery. And it was that made me have the confidence to actually fully go alone and do this myself. And before, I'd always been wanting to side with people because I didn't have confidence to do things on my own. And I think this is one of the problems people have, is having the confidence to go carry out an idea on their own. And we always look for investors or partners and all this. And sometimes it's better to start things on your own if you really believe in it.
That's very true.
Yeah.
There's so much in there. I'd love to go all the way back to the beginning where you said something that I think a lot of people are going to identify with, especially doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, like you said, people whose jobs involve following like an algorithm or a set of rules where the creativity gets stifled.
Yes.
I always think about that because they call it the art of medicine, right? So as a doctor, you'd think, oh, there's some art to it, there's a creativity. About 5%, and the rest is algorithm based.
Yes.
Like somebody comes in with high blood pressure, actually high blood pressure, okay, well, then we have to check it for 3 days. If it's high after 3 days, then we have to start with this medication. You don't just randomly start with anyone. You start with this one. If that one doesn't work, it's just literally, they have these things called like gold standard, and you have to go by them. Because in America, I don't know how it is in England, but we have such a litigious society that if you don't go by that algorithm and something goes wrong, you could be liable, right? And I distinctly remember thinking one day as I'm going through this algorithm back when I was practicing medicine and treating people, I was like, gosh, there is no art to this. Like the only art is essentially the little bit of bedside manner that I'm allowed to have. Or if they're failing the entire algorithm, then I get to be a little artsy and try something else, but that's only after everything else has failed. Otherwise, you just follow this. And I know that so many other doctors that I talk to, at least in our little doctor podcast world, that's what kind of drove us to the brink, was just having no creativity in our day. So we strike out to something else, but that's a huge thing for people to realize. They may not understand the effects that stifling their creativity all the time can have. Yeah.
Well, we're not robots for start. And here's the thing, the whole medical system is based on the understanding that we're robots and that we are linear, and it's based on a scientific reductionist model of how the human body works, which is that we're at averages. Everything is done by averages. So you have an average cholesterol reading, you have an average blood pressure. So if you go off that, then here's the pills, right? Now, the truth is that we're not linear, we're completely illogical, totally unrational, and every human being is unique and individual, okay? I don't know if you know this, but Gandhi's blood pressure was 200/100 for most of his life.
Wow.
And what did he die of?
I forget. Oh, shot. He was shot. I was like, hold it.
In his 80s. So he didn't die of any blood pressure complications. Right. So what's high blood pressure for someone maybe totally normal for them, but a problem for someone else. So you can't treat everyone the same. And the way to make money is to make everyone linear and follow protocols, and that's how to create systems and systematize everything. And that's the world we live in, and that's why healthcare doesn't work. It's failed. It doesn't serve people at all. Hardly anyone gets better through the conventional medical system. In fact, it's more likely that people are going to get worse on these protocols and things. And here's the thing, actually, adverse drug reactions, and most drugs are prescribed on this linear scientific reductionist model, are actually killing people more than anything else. Add ADRs and this non-alcohol cirrhosis of liver is actually one of the biggest killers, one of the biggest problems. So this is the problem now that we have, is overprescribing, people following protocols that don't work for everyone, and that's what I'm trying to shift, that's what I'm trying to change. Because I was told, all kinds of nonsense by the consultant. I was told that diet doesn't have any impact on this. I was told that stress doesn't have an impact on this. And I was just told to shut up and take the pills,
For your own illness?
Yeah, for my own illness. That's what I was told. And, they couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you get to the point where you're struck with the illness, right around the time that you had to make a decision about what your next career move would be. But then you said you were housebound. So what did it look like in that year? Because there are people out there, I'm sure listening, who have had what essentially is kind of a forced quit. Like you wanted to quit and you wanted to quit and you wanted to quit. And as you and I were discussing yesterday, there's a period at which your health no longer makes quitting an option.
Yes.
And what was it like for you to get to that point where the quit was essentially done for you by this health crisis?
Yeah.
At that point you had no income and you were forced to stay at home. What was that like? I'd like listeners to be able to kind of put themselves in your world to experience, because I'm sure many people have faced that same thing. If they let a health issue go too long, or if they let a stressful job go too long, then they get to that same point. And then they're faced with kind of a double crisis, like my health is failing and now I have no income and etc. Well,
shocking.
What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I got to the lowest point you could possibly go, right? I was sick, I was broke, I had no job, right? No relationships, and I was literally at the lowest you can possibly get, and I was also in lots of debt. So it was like they say that God stands for gift of desperation. So I was literally like begging to God for help at this point. I was so desperate. And actually, I had two choices in consultant. One was either be a guinea pig for a drug that hasn't tested yet, or have your colon removed and you'll be shitting in a bag for the rest of your life. So I was super desperate, because at that age, that's the last thing you want to be hearing, right? And luckily came to a rescue, a very close friend of my family, Swami Amkananda, who gave me the foundations of pranayama, yoga, Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is actually an amazing system of healing. And I urge every doctor on the planet to actually study it, because it's incredible, because it tells you that humans are not linear and that we're all unique and that there's no one size fits all. So from that, I learned a lot about my condition, and that in Ayurveda it already states, like through the energy types, what you're more prone to, and my energy type's more prone to these problems with the colon and things like colitis. So, and then it gives you treatment according to that, according to energy types. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
But I love Ayurveda. So I was like,
but what it also says is that you are your environment. Your mind is the environment. So the environment you surround yourself with is super important. Now, I was in a very stressful environment. First, my parents are always fighting with each other. There was a lot of drama in my house. My mum's also an extreme worrier, so she was worried to death over me, right? She was more worried about the condition than I was, bless her, but she's doing what most mums want, and she's doing it out of love. But I couldn't live in that environment. I had to shift that environment. I knew that a large part of my problem was this being in that dark environment. Firstly in the pharmacy, and secondly in a home. So one of the things that helped me a lot was going to the spa. I luckily live next to the spa called Nirvana Spa, right? And if you can find a place after work, if anyone is going through a similar problem, or if they haven't got to a point of being sick yet, I really recommend you don't try and set up a business in the same place that you live or work. All right. I mean, I was actually at one point, because I discovered the 4-hour work week. I was doing a lot whilst at work. When I was supposed to be dispensing pills, I was learning about internet marketing and PPC and all that stuff. But not everyone's going to be able to do that. But I was really using all the time I could to study. That was the first thing I did, to really learn about, firstly, how to cure myself, and then how to create a business around passion. So one of the things that my parents instilled into me was this hard work ethic, and I knew that the same way I got into pharmacy school is the same way I can create my own business. That is by getting to work, to study. So actually learning became a lot more fun, right, and enjoyable. And I now had time. I had a lot of time because I couldn't work. I didn't have a job. So, and the do or die situation was really what propelled me forward and motivated me, because I had to find a way to make the money each month. And then one of the first things I did was start to make websites for people, right? That was my first way to start making a little bit of cash, because it was so easy for me. I could figure it out, and it's just following a few principles, and you can make some nice sites on WordPress. But then I actually realized that you don't even have to You can hire people to do that. You just have to make the deals. So you don't have to be a programmer or website person these days. And there's many ways on the internet you can actually start a business. So I actually went to town on that, and I went and did it in the spa called Nirvana, where literally I would spend a lot of the day like just chilling, being in saunas, into jacuzzis, just thinking and dreaming, being creative and meditating and using these breathing techniques a lot. And then, then I spent some time actually studying and learning. And then eventually what happened was, it was like, it was a challenge like with the health, because the disease would like kick in, or it would like go away for a bit, and then I needed to just leave the negative environment altogether. I need to go somewhere else. And one of the things I really knew that helped me the most was when I was in the creative flow and I was laughing a lot. And actually one of my best friends, he's a doctor, psychiatrist. He also hated his job as well and things. We had a lot in common, and he had just broken up with his girlfriend, who they were, that's another story. They were, that's an Indian thing, traditional thing, where you have to be with somebody from the same village, same caste and all that. And he was with an English doctor, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But he was also, he really wanted to quit his job, and he also wanted to heal from this emotional trauma. So I said to him, look, why don't we just live together, and I'll move over to your place. And actually his home was this psychiatric hospital that had been converted into doctors' apartments. So it's a madhouse.
That's
right?
amazing.
Which means there's a lot of crazy creative energy in there. So I said, what we're going to do, we're just going to focus on making music. We're just going to do just music. Because I started doing this therapy music and putting on YouTube and getting lots of like instant feedback, and people were loving it. So I was like, let's just do this therapy music, like with this chill out music, ambient music. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. So I moved there, and then I literally lived with him for almost a year, and we made loads of this amazing music. And then he figured out a few things, and he created a business around something to do with psychiatry and exams and things. And he actually managed to like not have to do his full-time job. And I had now suddenly created a business that paid me more than my pharmacy income. So then I was like, well, I'm going traveling. So I went and started exploring different parts of the world. But the big golden thing was change of environment, because your mind becomes your environment. Following the passion, the bliss, and trusting in the universe, and aligning my passion with something that makes money, all right? That's super important. There's so many people who have passions and interests, but they don't align with a decent business model. So you need the business model. The great thing with the internet is that you can almost turn the craziest passions into money, if you know how. And that's why things like the 4-Hour Workweek are a good little like kickstart for doing that. There's so many more new, amazing platforms where you can learn stuff, like that. So yeah, I mean, like, do or die is for me the best thing that happened, because getting into that state. Because before that, I was dabbling. I realized I was just a dabbler, and I wasn't going deep on anything. And I was trying all these ideas, but not really going deep on it. And by deep, I mean learning everything you need to know to make that happen. Like learning the business model, learning the nitty-gritty, intricate parts of it, like marketing and the logistics and all that stuff. Like really learning it, not like superficially like learning it. Like, and that do or die situation was what gave me the focus, the motivation, the drive, the will to do it. Because otherwise it wouldn't have happened. And somehow I kept making enough money to pay the bills. I mean, I'm super grateful to my friend, because I didn't have to pay rent, and that was a big chunk of the bills. But I feel like, not everyone's going to be able to have that fortune, but you may have to move back in with your parents. But don't do it if your parents are going to be annoying to live with, and bring you down and question everything you do. If you have a good relationship with them, I would do it. If they're cool and they're supportive, do it. But if they're not, and if they're like the skeptical type and they're not going to support you, don't do it. get a part-time job. You know, if I hadn't have got sick, I would have definitely had a part-time job. I would have worked 2 days a week in the pharmacy, and just literally just lived really, really like within my means and saved. You know, and actually one of the things was when I got into this do or die situation, I stopped buying stupid shit. You know, it made me really manage my money and what was important. You know, I ate a lot less, I ate the right things, I didn't consume all the variety of shit that I used to, and I was very mindful over money. So these situations teaches you a lot about life skills, you know, management skills.
Yeah, those are all really good points. That moving home with your parents, unless they're toxic, is, I think, a very crucial point, because that's a great backup for a lot of people if they just need to like refocus and redirect. But it is really hard to redirect if you have negative energy coming at you,
Totally.
Putting their thoughts and expectations on you. And even if it's like you said, if you'd had a friend offer for you to stay with a friend who had the same kind of like, shouldn't you be going out and getting this type of job, you know, that same kind of negative energy, find yourself some situation that's going to allow you the proper environment. I love that tip. Now, at this point, is your illness healing or is it continuing?
Yeah. So I was literally housebound for a year, and about 7 or 8 months of that, I was with my parents. The rest of the time, I lived with my best friend Mish, and that's when the healing started to really kick in. And then a few months later, I was fine. I was cured, but I carried on. I kept living with him because we were having such a flow with the music. You know, and I was sleeping like in the kitchen. I remember at one point my bed was the kitchen because he only had a one bed, so I slept in the kitchen. It was crazy. But you don't care at that point. You know, you forget about like material things and comforts and all that. I just did whatever it took to make it happen, to survive.
I like that. Now, where does SOMA come into the picture?
Yeah. So what my Swami taught me was the foundations of pranayama, yoga, ayurveda. Okay, and then what happened was when I was able to leave my job and not have to go back to that, and I had all this automated income, I started to travel and I started to meet like tantric masters. I met Tibetan monks. I met amazing like superheroes like Wim Hof and all these crazy people, amazing people. And I started to really go deep on all these ancient practices. And everything led back to this legend of SOMA, which is this psychedelic origin of like religion and from Hinduism. And it's all talked about in this book called the Rig Vedas, the world's most ancient manuscript. In there, thousands of years ago, is a time where people lived in the golden age, in harmony with nature, and they lived for very long periods of time. They all reveled in this psychedelic plant concoction called SOMA, and they reach these ecstatic states and have direct communication with the heavens and gods. And that's where they divine all the knowledge that helped create the world's first civilizations. So that's the story of SOMA. However, what happens is, as the rishis, they start to move across the land, the SOMA starts to run out, and they all freak out because they're dependent on this. And I thought this was a great story because their way to get off the dependency of this was they went inwards and discovered how to create the SOMA within, this bliss molecule, DMT, whatever you want to call it, from within. And that became the origins of Tantra. So Tantra was the art of moving energy in the body through breath and asana, postures and things. It's pretty much what yoga is, but the yoga that we see today is a more corrupted form. But the original yoga was a tantric form of yoga. And through that they realized actually we have our own inner pharmacy. Okay, and this story is what I kept coming back to because it's what my Swami taught me about a long time ago. It was even before actually I cured myself of the illness. She had mentioned this to me, and it got me really intrigued because I was into psychedelics and stuff. And so then I realized actually that we can tap into our autonomic nervous system and switch off the stress and create our own medicines. We can actually lower the heart rate, we can increase the heart rate, we can create like the effects of what steroids has, we can lower inflammation, we can do like what blood pressure medication does, lower our heart rate, lower blood pressure, go to sleep, we don't need sleeping pills. And these are things I realized from this one breathing technique that my Swami gave me, which is this extended exhalation. And through that, I understood how we can tap into the vagus nerve. And because I really wanted to figure out why scientifically did these techniques help me? Why do these ancient techniques help me? So that my quest was to see who else is out there who've done similar things. Where is the science? And that was my mission. And that all kept consolidated in SOMA, this SOMA Breath, SOMA yoga techniques, which is like the original tantric school of pranayama yoga and Ayurveda, put into a system. And the ancient tribes people, these ancient cultures, one of the things a lot of them had in common was rhythmic tribal music, rhythmical music and dance and movement and breathing with the music and the rhythms. And so my first business, what I was really known for, was this meditation music using brainwave entrainment. Then I wanted to make it really easy for people to use breathing with the entrainment. So I changed the music. So instead of using brainwave technology, I used rhythm that signaled you when to breathe in and out. Okay, and by breathing in and out to that rhythm, I noticed that people were going into these amazing states much faster than trying to do it on their own, counting internally. You know, with a music guy, it would just be much easier to get into that mindless flow where you're just connected to the spirit. And so that became, I called it tripneural. Tripneural was that technology, and it got well known. And then I actually made music for the Wim Hof method. I did all the soundtracks of the Wim Hof method. I even went around doing events with him. And then like all these like famous therapists like Marissa Peer used my brainwave music, and now Mind Valley have signed some of my stuff for that. And I then perfected like the Soma awakening ritual, which I believe is the original breathwork ritual that these ancient rishis did as the alternative to the psychedelic plants. And for several years, the last few years, I've been perfecting this and having incredible results. I was living in my dream location, Koh Phangan in Thailand, which is like a school. They call it Tantra Island. So it's full of like tantra workshops and yoga and wellness centers, and it's an amazing place. And there I tested out all of these, and I started to do workshops, and then we ended up creating a festival all around it called Ecstatica, and I did all these big Soma workshops. And since a year ago, we've now had over 100 instructors around the world. We have this amazing online training, and we've actually now created abundance. So some people are quitting what they were doing before to become instructors, and just walking into these like amazing careers where they can actually help people using our tools. And this is a really in-demand thing right now. Right now, like, Tantra, yoga, all of these things are becoming more mainstream. I've like demystified, I've taken out a lot of the religion from it, kept in more science, and the music just makes it more accessible, more fun, more easy to do. And really Soma also in Greek, it means body, right? And the idea of one body, one mind, one spirit, one consciousness, one community. So we've created this big community of people, all like-minded. And when you breathe in a rhythm at the same time with people, it really strengthens the bond of people. And actually, the word spiritual actually means to breathe. In Latin, it comes from the Latin word espiritu. And spiritual actually means to breathe. And spirituality is is all about connecting through spirit, the life force, which is breath. So the original religious people, the spiritual people, the rishis, were people who were doing lots of breathing practices. Okay, and you see all of the cultures around the world, they all tend to have some form of breathwork in their traditions. So I've just made it more fun, more accessible, and I borrowed from different cultures, inspired from different cultures, and put it into a very amazing system. And the cool thing is like it's actually helping people. So if people are struggling for ideas of what to do, and maybe you don't want to create your own business, maybe you don't want to start from scratch. Well, we've kind of already done a lot of that for you. And we have these different courses. So there's some that's focused around breath and these amazing breathing ceremonies that you experienced yesterday. But we also have ones that are for like people who are like doctors or healers or therapists, where you learn the principles of Ayurveda in a much more systematized, easy to understand way. And through there you can then actually coach people in their health and help people get back to full health. And actually, like, we have people just doing that and making a lot of abundance and helping a lot of people with incredible testimonials and feedback from it as well.
Wow, that's very good to know, because like I said, I think we have a number of doctors listening that would love to have, because I bet, I'm just guessing, jumping into the minds of some of these doctors, when you started talking about pharmaceuticals, a lot of Western docs, I think we initially feel a little bit like, but I think there's that kind of that like, oh, why do they want to stop pharmaceuticals? And the reason that we think that is because we're given no other tools. You know that, like, we're not taught nutrition.
Yep.
We're not taught yoga or Ayurveda or anything else in medical school. We're just taught disease and disease treatment.
Yes.
And so I think we feel kind of impotent at times. I had done a sports medicine summer with some osteopaths, and osteopaths at least have been given manual therapy training. So they're they're DOs, so they're like MDs, but they additionally have chiropractic training, like some hands-on. So when I would go to these, I think we were doing minor league baseball, they would be like, well, I have this injury, and as a Western doc with no manual therapy training, I could do nothing but give them a pharmaceutical.
Yes.
Or rest or ice. But then the mentor who I was working with, who was an osteopath, he could come in and do an adjustment. And I think a lot of us who don't have any tools, pharmaceuticals all we have, it would be great for people to come and check out what you're offering, because then there's another way that they can actually help and learn, because it's really hard. I just interviewed Dr. Darshan Shah, who opened Next Health in LA, but he was overweight himself, and he said, I had to go back and learn from step one about nutrition because I knew nothing. And if you're at that point where you're like, okay, where do I start? Going to your website, checking out what you've got to offer for the healthcare workers.
Yes.
That's a great start, I think, for a lot of people.
Totally.
I wonder, for those who aren't familiar with it, and I think, in our circle, I think so many are familiar with it that we kind of forget sometimes that maybe not everybody knows what breath work is. And so the simple description I give is that it's something that brings you into a meditative state, but it's slightly more active than what we think of as traditional meditation, where we think we're supposed to just sit down and somehow be thoughtless, or like just stop thinking. And for a lot of the high performers, that's a difficult pill to swallow, so to speak. It's like, just stop thinking. And I think breath work is a great kind of bridge to get to meditation.